Well, hi guys, welcome to our second video. In the previous video, we talked more about the more general framework that we'll be looking at the portfolios. But in this video, we'll talk more about the branding portfolios. This is the case where you're a graphic designer or starting in branding and you need to have a couple strong projects in branding. And we'll be analyzing your branding projects based on this 10 categories. And we'll talk about each one in more details. And first off, Silo, let's kind of talk about what is branding overall to ground this up. When I think about branding, I really love that phrase that branding is what people talk about your company, your product, when you are not in the room. And branding is definitely, to me, is something more general than just colors, typography, stuff from the design world. Branding is not just the outfit. It's more the reputation that your look is trying to earn. This is your business asset. This is the narrative. This is what makes you unique, your brand unique from your competitor brands. How about you? How do you vision branding?
I think it's in a holistic view. It's a whole personality. It's positioning. It's how does your brand communication style or like positioning influences your target customers? How do you build that trust towards your target users? And how do you kind of make them think of you? I think a good branding is when your target users come to you to have you as an extended part of their personality, then I feel like that is a very strong branding.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And kind of lastly, brand is the money making machine for a company, right? As a designer, your goal is to create a brand that will bring money to the company. And kind of thinking about brand as a business asset is very important. And whoever of us are doing the stock trading or investing in brands, the stock market is a perfect illustration. How you invest in a brand, and then with time, that money grows on your part. So let's talk about the top brand elements that I think every branding project on your portfolio should have. This is like the whales of branding. I think every brand, it starts with a word, and to be specific, with couple words that illustrate what your brand is. So the brand voice is very important, and especially if you're studying in the design, I would start with coming up with a couple words that describe your brand. The second element is the logo. Logo is your passport, so to speak, in the world of business. Logos are used everywhere, and it's more around the specs that you create around the logos for your project. Color palette, of course, and we talk more about the colors, but this is must have. Typography as well. We'll talk more about defining couple typefaces for a brand. And also images and icons, the whole visual direction. Does your brand use still life images? Does it use only illustrations, like in Duolingo's example? Stuff like this. And just to give you guys an example, if I were to convey one simple message from this entire video, it would be, when you're working on your brand portfolios, please use as a reference existing brand guidelines and build something very similar. There are lots of blog posts of people sharing some examples from famous brands. So we will link one of these links to the video description. But some examples that I wanted to show, this is from Slack. So they start with the logo, move with the logo specs, and talk about typography. They talk about colors. There's another example of more interactive color guide from the Dropbox. And I love this example because it shows all the different components of this brand book. So again, typography, logo, voice, color, and so on and so forth. The first thing that we'll talk about is the strategy and brand foundation. Um, when I review the portfolios of people who start in graphic design and branding, I think oftentimes, well, first off, what I look at is the use case through which they have these projects. Could be two main use cases. One is the designer, you're working with existing brand guidelines, and then will be evaluating how well you follow the existing guidelines. Or you could be creating this entire new brand on your own. But in all these cases, I think the strategy foundation, the context of this brand project is very important to specify in the beginning. Why are you designing? Was there a problem with the brand that you decided to do this whole spec campaign? Who was your target audience? Always missing. Not always, but definitely often something that I'm missing. Like, who are you designing for? Who are your competitors? What language? What brand guides? How do they position themselves? Brand values, personalities. I think all of this is very, very important. With this in mind, now I'll have Silu talk about the brand voice and messaging.
Thank you, Monica. Okay, so when it comes to branding and voice, first thing we kind of want to think is like, or like the way you want to show it in your portfolio is, can we hear the brand before we see it? So that means like when I look at it, can I describe it with some adjectives right away? So that is the voice of the brand. And for example, one of the good example is Lush. So if you think of Lush, you instantly, when you look at them, their products, their shop, their website, we can see it here. We can instantly see Lush is playful. They believe in transparency. They believe in ethic, and they're very conversational. So all of these things, we can see it here. And this is their voice. We can see who made this product. They're really highlighting their keywords such as 100% natural. So this kind of gives the voice of the brand. This is something ethical. So if you really, if that is also something, you know, their target users are the people who really are into, I want to use products that are 100% ethical. So that's their brand voice. And another thing we want to kind of see is like, okay, you have set out your brand voice. That is like what you want to convey. But then like, what are the things that is not, you know, you? So I think in that example, we can see Duolingo. So in Duolingo, we can see they have really directed what they are and what they are not, how in terms of their brand communication. So when you take their language, when they're doing their lessons, they want to say it correct instead of saying you are correct. How they celebrate a learner succeed. So like they have this what you are, how we communicate and how we don't communicate. So I think that would be also something that we would like to see in terms of brand and voicing and messaging portfolio.
Yeah.
So the third part of the framework is about logo design and mark. So is the logo or the mark distinctive, flexible enough, and is it well reasoned? So we want to see what's the rationale behind the whole concept of the logo, how you translated, what was the brief from the company or the brand, and how you translated into such a flexible, distinctive, unique logo that really communicates to its target users. So in this thing, we can see an example of Slack. We want to see how you frame it, the whole logo. What is the scalable limit of the logo and how it looks when it's to its minimal version? What kind of iterations did you have coming to the final design of the logo? And what are the rationales that you're pulling into that logo? So we really want to see that. And after that, we also want to see the versions of logo, how it can be used in all different kinds of use cases, all those guidelines. We definitely want to see a black and white version of the logo and how the logo should be used and how the logo should not be used. So this is something we would absolutely want to see.
And when you guys are designing a new logo, my best advice is don't reinvent the wheel. There are amazing books like this old edition of Trademarks and Symbols, where you can get inspired by the existing logos. It's all very simple, black and white. just playing with the shapes, exploring. Because when you do go to the brand school, study graphic design, that would be one of the common exercises. They give you the name of the brand, and then you have your pencil and paper, and you just sketch as many versions of the logo as you can. So this kind of explorations that I would be expecting when reviewing your portfolios.
So the fourth part of our framework is about color system. So we want to see if the color is used strategically and not just decoratively. So whether you're taking an existing brand or you're creating something entirely new, we want to see how the rationale behind the color palette. If it's something entirely new, what's the connection between the brand values and the colors? And if you're adding a new color to an existing brand, what's the connection there? What is the rationale behind inventing or not inventing or bringing in this new color to an existing brand? So we want to see that. And from that, we want to see, all right, so what are your primary colors? What are your secondary colors? And what are your normal grayscale values? To what extent it scales, that we want to see that. And is it accessible? So of course, accessibility is a non-negotiable. Also, a couple of things we want to see: how are you pairing those colors? What's the uses of those colors? So we can see a good example is Dropbox. So they have a pretty diverse color system. And we can see their primary colors, this Dropbox blue. We instantly know that when we see this blue, we instantly know that this is Dropbox. It instantly reminds you, oh yeah, this is the Dropbox color. So that is the power of color. So it's very important that your primary colors are strong, distinctive. It's distinctive from your competitors, and it's accessible, and it conveys the emotion that what the brand wants to convey. And then, of course, we have our accent colors and different hues of grays. And we want to see how you match this color palette that you have created. That depends on the brand, like how diverse it is or it is not. But how is it complementing, all the elements of your brand? What is the use case? So we would really like to see that. Like an example here. How is it in app? How is it in imagery? What's the palette if there's an illustration, and so on. So the fifth part of our framework is about typography system. So does the type system work hard, or does it look just pretty? And in this case, well, first of all, of course, we need the rationale behind. If it's something entirely new typography that you've set for something new, then like, what's the rationale behind it? Does it connect with the brand values? Of course. And then we want to see how many types did you use. Maximum, it would be 3 in general, because we need a font that is legible, generally accessible. But then you might also need, depending on the brand, maybe a decorative font style, or even a custom font style. So we would like to see, if you did come to that point, then how did you come to that point? Like, why the brand needed a decorative font or a custom decorative font on top of, like, all the font varieties that we have. And a good example of that is Duolingo. Again, the connection here is Duolingo's brand adjectives is playful, human, ethical, very bold, very strong, very outspoken. And in terms of color, they have this black and white, which is very, strong. And to complement their brand identity, they've used typography, and they've created their own decorative typeface, a custom type that really conveys their brand. And it is mimicking a handwritten font in the board, which is again connecting to their brand, that they're very ethical and they're more conversational, human to human kind of brand. So we would like to see how you came about, if you have a decorative text, how you came about that. Is it accessible? What is the scalability of the font? What's the use cases of each of those type of fonts? And how you format that in the brand guideline book. So the sixth part of our framework is around imagery, illustration, and iconography. So we want to see, is there a clear, ownable visual world beyond the logo? We want to see what other visual elements of the brand has added a new an extended identity in the digital visual world. So we would like to see that. And it could be different kinds of things in terms of like the extension of the visual world. It depends on the brand, of course. It could be a different set of icons. If it's like more around iconography, we want to see, is there a consistent stroke? Is there a consistency in the weight of the stroke? Radiuses, the whole grid system. If it's photography, how is style, what's the style of photography and how is that complementing the brand? If it's illustrations, then again, on illustrations, we want to see other supporting elements, that is other supporting patterns that connects the illustrations to the brand. So for example, what we can take a look at Duolingo in terms of illustration. So for Duolingo, we can see how they have constructed the base for their illustration. So this is something we would like to see if it's around, illustrations or even in iconography. For example, what kind of shapes is their basic shapes, right? So that is something we want to see if it's around illustrations. How are they building these illustrations? And what's the extent, like what kind of shapes is absolutely not the brand and what is the brand is also something very important to look at, because when it comes to illustrations, there is thousands of varieties we can get into, so we want to see. And also another thing we would like to see is like if it's an example of you adding a new visual extension to an existing brand, what is the rationale behind it? And how could a brand evolve into, into a new identity or like something elevated identity? And a good example here is Apple. If you remember Apple is very minimalistic, very like a futuristic kind of brand. But if you look at their site now, they're really evolving and adding these illustrative 3D looking elements with gradients. And they're trying to bring in a fun and human elements into their brand. So how are you doing that if you have those? What is the rationale behind it? And how is that extended visual element helping the brand is what we would like to see.
I love this example, Silu, because it's also it looks like a marketing campaign for the Father's Day, right? And why do they use doodles? Like if I'm a dad arriving in the site, it talks to me, right? It's like, oh, this is the doodles of my daughter, and you like Pavlov's dog training, you get this emotions, right? Now it's not about Apple products, but you're selling the emotion, the feeling of being a dad, and I think that's the power of brand. I love that example.
So the seventh part of the framework is around layout, grid, and composition. So we want to see, is it repeatable, scalable in spatial system? This is one of the most invisible part of the whole brand guidelines and the brand design system. And also this is one of the most important and very critical base for all the other brand elements, whether it be typography, iconography, illustrations, anything. So we want to see what is the base of your construction, what's the column structure, margin, spacing units, how is it repeatable, how is it scalable, to what formats is it scalable, what would it look like in a social media post or in an app, in a web view, in a maybe, I don't know, a digital kiosk view. It really depends, but we want to see all those varieties of formats on how a certain element of the brand would scale. And one of the example is, for example, Slack, how the Slack logo scales around, different formats. So what is it in a portrait mode? How does it look like in a landscape mode? So we would like to see these variations. And in terms of the white space uses as well, is it something intentional or is this just like something that's just left over just because? So we would like to see reasoning behind those as well.
So now let's talk about Section 8, brand in application. This is a very important part of your portfolio because here you start working with what you already defined in the earlier stages, right? You already know your target audience, the problem you're trying to solve, your colors, patterns, typography. And now you just need to showcase how this existing or new brand that you just created, how it comes to play. um, Usually what I'm seeing in the portfolios of people who just starting, maybe some examples of the packaging for the brand, um, maybe like some mock-ups of the posters, but I encourage you guys to go beyond this. So let's take one of my favorite, personal favorite brands, the crumble cookie. You know, as a designer, if I were to work on this project, yeah, one of my first tasks might be creating the box. But this is just maybe 10% of the entire list of tasks that I would be tasked. And for example, if you look at the Instagram and the social media, this is just an example of what kind of assets you would be needing to create. So make sure that your portfolio accommodates for the social channels, for all the digital communications, because that's the world that we live in. So what makes it a good brand? Besides well execution, in my mind, is originality, is how you creatively execute this brand. One of my favorite brands is the new brand, the sunglasses brand called Gentle Monster. And um, I think the adjectives that would describe this brand are is avant-garde, is experimental, is futuristic. How does it play out besides the product, just to illustrate the concept? They have really unique glasses across different colors and textures. They're really experimental, but I was blown away by the actual box, right? And this is not the actual product, this is just the packaging, that it's already the whole unpacking. It was telling a story of minimalism, of experimental, of futuristic. And that unexpected or surprising element for me when I got curious about this brand was that they use one of my favorite actress Tilda Swinton as the face of that brand. And immediately, when scrolling this, you could get the vibe. They use dancing, they use performance, they connect it with Hollywood. It's entire cinematic journey that this brand is taking me. But most importantly, as the consumer of this brand, I look at these glasses and I don't see, oh, like it's red. What I see is the identity. It's like, Monica, now you're like Tilda Swinton. You're a cool girl. You're innovative. You are futuristic. It's almost like I become a part of that brand, a part of this identity. And I think that's the most important thing is in that bullet point. Um, and moving on to our last slide, of course, last but not least, but it's the overall showcasing in your portfolio how you handle this project all the way from conception to the handoff. And usually, the most important thing you need to remember here is that it should be some sort of either a PDF, like we talked in the Slack's example, a PDF file that you then will share with other teams, give it to the design team, to marketing team, to all your possible collaborating brands. Or it's like some brands are now leaning towards is this more interactive visuals design system brand guide that will be through a link. So if your portfolio has either, that would be amazing. And we're moving to the end of our video. Some parting notes, some top insights. Silo, what would be yours?
What I would like to see is concreteness. So it's not just the amount of brand guidelines elements that you would have would really depend on the type of your project, so that's okay. But what I'd like to see is the concreteness of the guidelines on how you present it, what exactly it is, how to use it, what's the scalability, what's the base, and what's the rationale. The basics, concreteness is something that I would like to see.
And on my side, I would love to add that branding is very important, especially right now, as AI is getting used more and more in creative process, as we're seeing more polished, beautiful design. Branding is the trust, is the feeling, is the story that your customers will attach to you. Brand cannot be reverse engineered, I think. Brand is the soul of the product that us as designers need to define. So with this in mind, I'm looking forward to us actually diving into the portfolios and talking, unpacking some of these concepts using real examples. Thank you so much for being my co-pilot, Silo, and see you
Bye.
guys in the videos. Bye.
Bye.